Please tell me you understand where Hakari was up against Redacted RJ, please dog. I censor that just so a random person doesn't get spoiled, so scroll away if you don't want JJK spoilers. Anyway, let's quickly go over the significance of Uraume versus Hakari, the themes of JJK, a further look at Hakari versus Uraume and how it relates to real life, and how I as a content creator approach my content. And as usual, if you have any problems with how I pronounce Hakari, as in like na-na-mi or ha-na-mi, I have a video posted with a linguistics tutorial on my page. In short, Hakari was there to keep Uraume from Sukuna, giving everyone a chance to succeed. And when you take that a step lower, the fight was also used to represent the old versus the new generation. Hakari's reverse curse technique is stronger than Gojo's or Sukuna's, and the younger generation will always find a way to prevail, even if they aren't physically stronger than a one-to-one comparison of the people they're being compared to. And then maybe the final level below this is that they complete each other's character arcs or narrative arcs. If you want more on that, I saw an amazing video by Professor Coach, go check out his video, he does an excellent job at analyzing their fight. So some common themes in JJK are, it's a little bit messy, but good versus evil, the most obvious one, old versus new or tradition versus change, love versus apathy or lack of community or empathy or like love coming through, you get the vibe, and humanity versus lack of humanity or defining what humanity is. And Hakari and Uraume touch on at least 3 of those themes even without having an extensive fight, which I agree I would like to have seen a bit more just because it's really cool and I like the character, but it wasn't necessary to the plot. 2 things can be true at once. And I don't necessarily think this was an important plotline, but I do find it interesting, funny, entertaining that Hakari was the only one who didn't have to give up something for this fight. It felt less like he had a grand sacrifice for his humanity and he just kind of was built that way. Because if I remember correctly, and by remember I mean I could be wrong because I don't remember every single detail about this manga, most of the characters in this final fight had to lose something in order to have a stake in this fight, or they had to willingly sacrifice something, typically their humanity. And I'm just like, what did Hakari give up? His chance to fight Sukuna? Okay, but technically he gave up his humanity by accepting being alone during the fight and constantly being tortured. But if you ask me on a deeper level, I think a noteworthy or interesting theme that Gege didn't necessarily plan, but was a natural consequence of Gege making the manga a metaphor for life, was that Uraume quickly accepted Hakari for who he was. Stay with me because we have to briefly dive into politics, which JJK does all the time anyway. Jujutsu Kaisen discusses the elders and their conservative views and dislike for sorcerers like Hakari, that this 1,000+ entity, who's older than everyone, deems Hakari as an unworthy opponent and states that he's untethered to the other things in the world that make him weak unlike everyone else. And I feel like, intentionally or not, this does mirror real life, because what are conservative values? In the context of the present, let's just say 1 to 200 years, it's an arbitrary number. They're values that hold on to how things are in tradition. But if you take that context and expand it to 1,000+ years, those conservative values would be progressive or a deviation. And it could be argued that the newer, now progressive values are going back to how things were. It's a bit of a reach, so you need some nuance to see what I'm saying. These conservative values are not the same values as how things were 1,000+ years when things were simpler. There wasn't race, money, gender, identity, status. Even Sukuna tells Jogo to forget about identity and anything that holds him back in the conquest to get power, because none of that matters, it just gets in the way. So I just think, imagine what kind of conversation Uraume would have with the elders. They would probably disagree with the elders in their ways and probably agree more with the newer generation like Hakari. The irony of it all. So on the topic of content creation, when I make my content, especially for JJK, because that's the only piece of media that I ever put this much effort into, I do poke at these themes or these concepts and I do a lot of research to make sure I understand what's going on. Yes, I'm a cosplayer, I do silly lip syncs, I do little jokes, but I also do skits and scene remakes and basic VFX and try to bring things to life when I can, which means I often try to have a basic understanding of the character I cosplay on an individual level, on a level in terms of how they fit in their relationships, as well as a level on how they fit inside the story and their entire world. And that is how I pull off these jokes and these double entendres, these triple entendres. That's why I did a whole deep dive on Sukuna and figuring out his fire arrow and what it means. Or that's why I have so many videos about Hakari's identity. Or even a video about how Nanami ties his tie. Because I enjoy understanding the character and the kind of content I'm making. So when I make a vague joke about Hakari and Uraume dating, or Hakari's plan to fight Sukuna, even though I don't necessarily find the dating jokes to be that funny, it's just not my cup of tea really, it's because I understand their connection, their importance for each other's arcs, and the relevance of these jokes within the fandom. Some people thought that my JJK chapter 259 video was a leak or a spoiler, and it was purely based on previous manga chapters. I filmed it a whole week prior, analyzing Gege's pattern of using vagueness and ambiguity, and acting like characters are dead or gone from the story, then bringing them back over and over. So even though I think I had a good analysis, it wasn't super shocking that I predicted that Hakari would still be alive after whatever happened, because that's just what Gege does. All of my videos that deep? No, and I can definitely be wrong sometimes. Hi, hello, I'm currently editing and I just realized I accidentally never filmed the conclusion of my video because I never hit record, so here is the conclusion. The point I was getting at is if I, some random no-name content creator, can make all these associations and make all this content based off of what Gege is doing and seeing what they're writing, then it's not unreasonable for someone like Gege, whether you like them or not, whether you think they're a good writer or not, to have the depth and range to create so many associations and double and triple entendres and so many parallel themes. times. Because there's always this whole, it's not that deep discourse, you know, it's not that complex discourse, but it's not to say that you have to enjoy every single detail about the manga to understand it or to call yourself a fan. It's just nice when you do get to learn more and actually associate it with real life and have these complex thoughts.